welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top podcast. I am your host, Harrison Reno, alongside me, co-host Dan Kiley. Tuesday evening, it is a two-a-day type of day here on the Top podcast. If you didn't see it earlier, go back after today's show's over and listen in to the Cam Robinson podcast or interview that we did. We're still trying to come up with a name for what we're going to call those type of episodes because they aren't Georgia-related. Not going to be in the least bit. They are high school football, grassroots baby type of interviews that we're doing with some of our favorite, I guess, prospects, you can call it. People that either Dan knows or someone I know, and try to boost their profile. Not that we have a profile here, because if we did, but people that we like and want to see succeed. Really, really good interview with that kid. He's going to do special things at the next level. 2024 running back senior who I believe signing in February, he said. Dan, how are you doing this Tuesday evening?
I am doing just as well as I was the last time I saw you, which seems like it was, like 2 or 3 hours ago. And it was. But listen, that was a really nice little treat that we had today, an opportunity to do something. And, I tease you all the time because I know this is such a passion of yours. I'm like, I get bored just covering Georgia all the time. Of course, I'm kidding. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for us to do something a little bit different, Harrison. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then also the side benefit of that is we could bring attention to some kids in the local area. And, a lot of times you read the name in the paper and you think you know a kid, but you really don't know the kid until you kind of get to hear him talk. And this gives them an opportunity to do that, to put a voice, some words with a face. And then also, as an added benefit is, there's no real consequences to being on our show. We're not going to beat them up. We're not going to say anything negative. And then also they get media training, and it allows them to get a little bit more comfortable in a back and forth environment. So I think it could be something that could be beneficial to everybody. And I really hope we get an opportunity to get running with that. But saying all that crap, we got a loaded show, brother.
We were cooking. Let's just put it that way. We were cooking when we come up with what we want to talk about today. The news cycle has kind of gone crazy. And speaking of media trading, this guy does not need media trading. In fact, I hope people take media trading from this guy, Lane Kiffin, the Portal King, as he may be known now here on the Top podcast, is cooking over there in the transfer portal. Dan, he has 10 commits so far in the transfer portal, and the portal's only been open for about maybe a week or two now. Where you can actually go in and get in there and actually, start talking to schools legally. Obviously, they've been talking probably since August. Was not Kiffin, not making any allegations. I think everybody's probably been talking to people since August. But anyways, he has 10 commits. He's the number 1 ranked transfer portal class in the country, Dan. And the hot topic, the reason I want to bring this up today, you know how many of those commits are on the defensive side of the ball, guys? 8 of them. 8 of the 10 are on defense. And these aren't just some randoms coming out of Tijuana Tech. These are dudes. These are Power 5 SEC dudes that he's bringing in there. He's bringing in the Florida edge rusher, Princely. I still don't know how to say his name, even though I was somebody that I wanted Georgia to go after. He's over there now. They just got Tyler Barron over at Tennessee. I believe he was a 10-plus sack guy over there at Tennessee. He's there now. Their biggest offensive commitment so far is Juice Wells, the receiver over at South Carolina, the one that took the screen pass for a touchdown against Georgia. He's over there now to pair with Jackson Dart, and he doesn't seem to be done yet here, Dan. According to Crystal Balls, which, as Steve Wiltfong may tell you, are accurate about 90% of the time, they're leading for Walter Nolan, the former 5-star defensive tackle that is now transferring out of Texas A&M. Dan, we talked about this on the phone the other night. It's you got to find the right balance, the balance between building your team through the portal and building your teams, through high school recruiting. You don't want to just focus on one or the other. You want them to kind of supplement your roster and supplement each other. And it seems like Lane Kiffin's starting to find that groove of, hey, I'm still going to take the high school players and still try and get the best young guys in the country, but also I'm going to fill some holes with this portal, and I'm going to get a lot of them.
The one thing that I would tell you is you have completely buried the lead. If you go back into the SEC media days, Lane Kiffin pulled a Nick Saban. He went and he complained about the transfer portal, about how it's ruining football, this, that, and the other. And then he goes out and he just absolutely rips the Band-Aid off and opens up that portal and just loads up on talent. But it's the same thing that Saban did. He would always complain about something, see if they can get them to change it, and if he can't, then he figures out, well, how can I take advantage of it? And that is, Kirby has been with Saban, Kiffin has been with Saban. I mean, you're a fool if you're around a legend and you don't pick it up, right? The one criticism I always hear, or I don't even know if it's a criticism, just the comment that always gets, Kirby and Georgia want to be like Alabama. Hell yeah. Why wouldn't you? I mean, are you stupid? Like, you want to be like Nick Saban. Well, he's the greatest to ever do it. Why would you not want to be like him? I mean, that's the dumbest thing in the world. Like, oh, Harrison got 100 on his final, so now you're going to try to get 100 on your final? Well, hell yeah. Like, I don't get that part of it. And Kiffin has done that part really well. Now, the one thing that Kiffin has created on his own is the mouthpiece, right? He has learned how he can use social media to his benefit. The kids respond to it. And he's a good coach on top of all that. Does he always get the best of everybody? No, he doesn't. I mean, but that happens. Ole Miss is one of those jobs where the pressure is going to be the pressure. Meaning you have to do a good job. But it's not Alabama and Georgia where, well, I say Georgia, but they let Mark Richt stay here for 15 years and ride it. It was kind of like a steady line, right? Where like if that happened to Alabama, if they were a 10-win team every year for the next 15 years, they would kill themselves. And I'm not saying that facetiously. They probably literally would do that. Go back to when they were losing football games. They were going over to each other's house and shooting them. I mean, go read the news clippings from when they would lose games. They would go kill people. It's crazy. Alabama fans are crazy. You don't have those crazy fans over there in Ole Miss. They're a little bit more laid back, a little bit more gentlemanly. And they just don't care as much, to be completely honest. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. They just don't care as much. So he's in a great position. And now he is completely loaded up on the. And do they not have Judkins coming back? Because I didn't see that listed anywhere. I thought Judkins.
I don't know if he's made a decision. I think he's only a sophomore, so I believe he is coming back.
Jeremiah, you're in the comments. If Judkins is a sophomore, give us a thumbs up because I think he is a sophomore. But they have Judkins coming back, and you have somebody like Juice Wells to join up with Judkins and Dart. And Dart coming back is a big thing because it gives a quarterback another opportunity to play in Lane Kiffin's system. He doesn't have to worry about that. They're going to have wide receivers. They always have wide receivers. So I think Ole Miss literally 100% could be a real threat. And we say that, and it's really early, and I get all that part of it. But I think Ole Miss could be something, and I think Lane Kiffin has done a fantastic job in the transfer portal.
I mean, and when you take this angle, this isn't just next year is going to be just another year in the SEC where you're having to worry about Bama, Georgia, A&M, LSU, all those guys. They're coming into an SEC year where you're going to have Texas and OU, like two other programs that are supposed to be perennially at least 10-win football programs. People contending for titles, people contending for SEC championships, conference championships. Those are the two programs they're adding to the conference this year, which for Ole Miss, kind of affects them more than anybody because Ole Miss has kind of bridged the gap between being a 7-8 win football program to being a 10-win football program under Lane Kiffin and being second or third in the SEC West. Now you got two other teams coming in here that or at least expect to at least win 10 games. So they're kind of encroaching on their territory there. And they're, so far, what it looks like from the portal, Lane Kiffin has responded by saying, okay, you want to bring more talent in? Well, I'm going to juice up my roster with some more talent myself. That way I can kind of and try to compete. Dan, he's not the only one. And I'm not going to go out here and say this guy's the portal king because everybody is loading up at the portal. Oregon supposedly is looking to add Dante Moore at quarterback along with Dylan Gabriel. Talking about loading up at one position there. But a guy, a familiar name here at Georgia, Fran Brown, over there at Syracuse. I don't know where the Deion Sanders hype is, but what he's doing at Syracuse is, I don't want to say it's on the same scale as what Deion Sanders was doing at Colorado last year, because obviously Deion Sanders made headlines for telling guys that he had Louis with him in his baggage, and he was, replacing those guys with Louis. That's not what Fran Brown's doing. Fran Brown's just going out and getting football players. players that may not have been able to play at Georgia last year, and Yazid Haynes and Jackson Meeks. He's brought them in. He's brought in the starting quarterback at Ohio State, whether or not you like him or not. That was his title last year, in Kyle McCord to be his quarterback. And he just brought in his latest big commit, big fish in a smaller pond now, Fadil Diggs, the edge rusher over at Texas A&M. Another one that I guess one of those guys that has gotten away from Texas A&M since Jimbo's been fired. He had, I believe it was 8.5 sacks. He's now over there at Syracuse. Like, we're talking Syracuse football is getting people that Georgia took out of high school, Ohio State took out of high school, Texas A&M took out of high school. Dan, let's get your take. What are your thoughts on Fran Brown and Syracuse? I never thought I would be asking you about Syracuse on the Top Dog Talk podcast, but here we are.
The one thing that we took for granted, and we were told that Fran Brown was an elite recruiter. And Fran Brown was the lead recruiter on some of the guys that are following, like Yazid Haynes. I was told, I mean, I could be wrong, but I was told that Fran was his lead recruiter, and basically the only reason he came to Georgia is because of Fran Brown. And there's a lot of guys in that room that really responded to him and were really on board with him. So it's not shocking. And then also, what is the one pitch that he has that a lot of the other schools don't have? And that is playing time. Good evening, sir. Thank you for finding us again. But yeah, honestly, so like what is the one thing that Syracuse has that Georgia and Alabama doesn't have is instant playing time, right? So Fran Brown is like, hey, listen, I'm going to build something, but it's going to take a minute. But with guys, like he's bringing in really high class, high caliber players that are going to get to play right away. And that is really intriguing to a really talented player, is to playing right away. Like when we talked to Cam earlier today, one of the things that he said is what's interests him when he's looking for a school is, where can I go play? Because I don't want to sit on a bench for 3 years and just play my last year. He was on the show. He said it himself. That is the attitude of a lot of these kids, is that they understand, like, yeah, this school is better than that school, but if I'm going to go over there and sit for 4 years or 3 years or 2 years or whatever the case may be, I don't want to do that. I want to go play. So that's really intriguing. And, to your point of the Deion Sanders treatment, man, listen, Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer and with a massive personality, right? Like, so the media was going to pay attention to him anyway, but why? It's because he's boisterous, right? He's big. He puts it out there. He has a damn camera crew following around. He had the whole season they were making the Coach Prime show the whole year. Like, he's about that. Like, he is about that attention. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Please don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying anything bad. Yeah, it's just who he is. We don't know anything about Fran Brown like that because Kirby doesn't let his assistant coaches talk. So we have no idea. I have no idea what this man's personality is. I saw him do his press conference when he got hired at Syracuse. Seemed like an affable guy. Seemed like a guy I would like to hang out with. But the kids respond to him. But he's what are they? There's also ninjas move in silence, right? And that's that to me. That's the approach that Fran Brown is taking, because he hasn't made any statement. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't sent out any crazy tweets like, now you know what's going on. Like, none of that. It's been ninjas move in silence. He is just an assassin. And he's going after these high-level guys. And again, the one cherry that he has that nobody else has, I got playing time for you guys.
Yeah. And I'm interested to see how they do over there, because they're in a conference where I'm looking at Syracuse's.
What's the most important thing? What's the one thing you have to be successful? You have to have a quarterback, a decent quarterback, a quarterback that's capable of winning. You can say whatever you want to about Kyle McCord. Okay. He may not be a Heisman Trophy guy. He may not be the greatest quarterback in all of college. He can get it done. He's serviceable. He's good enough for a first year. I mean, for a coach in his first year, you could do significantly worse than Kyle McCord. And I know you guys call him Honda Accord or whatever you guys call him, making fun of him, but dude is serviceable. So I think out of all the names that he's gotten so far, that's the biggest one. because that's the one chip you have to have is you have to have a quarterback that can, orchestrate. And I think he's good enough to do that. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Harrison. My son says
You're
I do
good.
that way too much. But he says, you don't ever let Harrison talk. But anyway, I apologize. But Kyle McCord is extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get it twisted here. This is a guy that was just at Ohio State, starting for Ohio State last season. Whether or not he performed up to Ohio State standards, neither here nor there in this discussion, because this
He
isn't
lost one
Ohio
game.
State and this isn't the Big Ten. This is Syracuse, playing in the ACC, where obviously the competition isn't going to get higher than it was in the Big Ten. Fran Brown doing an amazing job over there. Dan, a little bit of a different format to today's show, talking more national, because we got guys like Always Believe in Alabama that want to hear our national takes and all that. Plus, it's the offseason. You got to feel not even. I hate saying it's the offseason, but it feels like it. With no Georgia football for about a month. Let's get into our college football playoff predictions. Got 2 games. Usually we've become accustomed to Georgia being in these 2 games. That Georgia's, one of the 2 teams playing in the second weekend of January. Dan, let's talk about it. Let's start with the Rose Bowl. Michigan versus Alabama. I love the pageantry that comes with the Rose Bowl, the atmosphere. It always translates when you watch it on TV or whether you're there in person. It always comes across that screen. You can always feel it. Just something in the air there. We talked about it last week. I think we both know where we stand on this. But let's get Dan Kiley's take on how the Rose Bowl will play out.
So here's the thing: is you're right. The pageantry of the Rose Bowl is it goes without saying. It's beautiful. It's a great environment. But what makes Michigan special? What is the one thing that Michigan can do? Is supposedly they have an elite defense. I don't believe that for a second. And then the other thing is that they can run the ball. That sounds eerily similar to the exact same blueprint that they said was going to beat Georgia. And Georgia, the score may not indicate that it was an absolute massacre, but that was an absolute beatdown that Georgia put on them. What is Alabama good at? Alabama's really damn good at stopping the run. You know that? It seems to me that Alabama's got a good front seven, and they stop the ball. And I'm either going to be really, really right or I'm going to be really, really wrong, because I don't see a scenario at all where Michigan can compete with Alabama. Matter of fact, I think Alabama's going to beat them so bad that they're going to force J.J. McCarthy to come back for another year, because they're going to make him look like shit. And I'm standing on business on that one, because I think this Alabama team, the one thing that we heard last year was that Alabama was on the revenge tour, and that did not go well for Alabama. And I think Alabama fans would tell you that too. But I think Alabama spent this last offseason just frothing at the mouth. And I really feel that now that they've got the quarterback thing situated, they're not as good at running back as they've been in the years past. They're not as good at wide receivers they've been in years past, but it is a really well-rounded football team, as Georgia found out firsthand. And that defense is still really damn good. And Caleb Downs, in my opinion, and that's never going to change, is the best player in America. So I think Alabama is going to just roll Tide all over their ass.
I'm with you here. I don't think Michigan's going to be as much of a contest as people really think they is. As people think they are. It's a 1-game schedule, product of playing nobody for 11 games out of the 12-game schedule. You played Ohio State. You played well against Ohio State. I'll give you credit there. But other than that, nothing that I've seen from them has impressed me at all. I don't think J.J. McCarthy's that special, and that's not a shot against him. I frankly think he's just a product of a system that really altogether isn't that impressive. When you look at it on tape and you look at it from an analytical perspective. Bama's going to roll on these guys. I think Bama's probably going to win by at least 20 points is my prediction here. I think it's going to be a good old-fashioned beatdown, because really, when you look at the styles make fights. I look at Bama as, offensively, Bama's much more finesse. You have the quarterback run with Jalen Milroe. You have that dual threat aspect of them where they can kind of go a little bit more spread. Michigan's much more ground and pound. We're going to play you in a phone booth and try and grind this out. I don't think that plays well into Michigan's favor when you're going up against a team like Alabama, where their two of their best players are in their front four with a Boygby and Dallas Turner. And then you go to the back end, they got 4 NFL players on the back end there with McKinstry, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Tyrion Arnold, Caleb Downs. I'm forgetting the last safety they got there. More. 4 really good NFL players all on their back end there. And who's the X factor? Like, this is the one thing. I can name multiple X factors for Alabama in this matchup. I can't name one for Michigan. One.
No.
What do you say, Dan?
No, and you're 100% right. Blake
Corum, yeah.
Corum is their guy, but he's an undersized guy who's not really all that fast. So I mean, like I said, I'm either going to be really right or really, really wrong. And I'm sure if I'm really, really wrong, I'm going to hear about it. I'm sure it's going to show up somewhere. But I really don't think that they compete. But the one thing I will say is I don't know if Alabama empties the clip, because Saban and Kirby are very similar, where when they have another game to play, they're not going to show everything, right? So like last year against Ohio State, obviously you had to do what you had to do. But the team that we saw against TCU, you don't have to worry about showing anything anymore because there's nobody else to prepare for. So I'm saying all that to say that I think Alabama is going to dominate, of course, on the lines of scrimmage, as our friend pointed out. But I also think that they're going to get the lead, maybe a touchdown or 2, and then they are going to go into the Kirby Death March that we always talk about. Well, the Saban Death March, and I think that they're just going to win the game because there's style points don't matter for this game. And then I think if Alabama's able to get through this, that they're going to unload the clip against whoever they play for the national title. That's the only other point that I was going to make, is that I started thinking about that. I was like, they have one more game to play. So I don't think they're going to show everything. They're going to do what it takes to win. And then what do we got here? Alabama has 3 players this season with at least 7 sacks. Holy hell. I didn't know.
Ooh.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be kind of irrelevant against Michigan because they're not going to try to throw the ball. So
they're going to have to. They won't be successful. I will say that. I really don't. Considering Georgia didn't have much success there, and Georgia has a lot more dudes, even without 100% Brock Bowers or Lau McConkey out there out wide. Dan, second and final. Who's going to be in the national championship game? We have Texas and Washington in the Sugar Bowl. This one I think is probably going to be the close matchup. I don't know if it will be as close and as great of a game as Georgia Ohio State was, but I think this one's going to be a really good matchup. No surprise to you, Dan. I'm taking Texas with this matchup. I think we get the Texas-Alabama rematch in the national championship game. That feels like what it's going to happen here. And I got one reason for this, Dan. I got one reason. It's what I said last week when I was talking about Alabama versus Michigan. This game's going to come down to the line of scrimmage, as it always does when a semi-SEC team or someone like that comes to play against an out-of-conference team that I don't want to say Washington's been the Cinderella story in the same way that TCU has, but it almost feels like it with the way they've, kind of the last 5-6 weeks of the season. They're always that Cinderella team. And like you said, always believe in Alabama. They do have 3 great receivers. And Texas, yes, on the back end are suspect. But I really don't think that Washington's offensive line is going to be able to hold up against a Texas front 7 that has been really, really special. Not to mention, it seems like Quinn Ewers has finally got his aura back about him after missing however many games he did due to injury. I think Texas is going to win this game. I think it's going to be maybe a 1-score game heading into the fourth quarter, but I think Texas finds a way to put the Huskies away and make sure Purple Rain does not happen over there in New Orleans.
I see what you did there. I like it. So here's the thing, and this one's tough, right? Because we watched TCU go play against Michigan last year, and it felt like Michigan should have won that game pretty easily, and they didn't. That's kind of how I feel about Texas. It feels to me like Texas should take care of business very easily, but I have that in the back of my head. To me, Washington being the West Coast team, and it's probably unfair, real finesse, I tend to lean towards that they're not going to be good enough, right? We did hear going into the national championship game that TCU had great running back. That didn't pan out. We heard that they had amazing wide receivers, and one of them is a first-round draft pick. That didn't pan out at all. The kid who had the receiving was the guy like basically we weren't covering. And Georgia completely dominated that game from beginning to end. Now, is Texas Georgia? No. Is Texas Alabama? No, they're not. But they are talented. And they have been telling everybody that will listen that they are back for about 15 years, even though they haven't won anything. But they have this year. Quinn Ewers is a really, really good quarterback. And you're right to say that. What did you say? He got his mojo. It wasn't mojo.
His aura.
His aura. The aura is cleansed. The aura has been cleansed around Quinn Ewers. He cut his mullet off at the beginning of the year, and he's been more businesslike. And he's really been in control of that offense. And I think that adding A.D. Mitchell, while it may seem irrelevant to a lot of different people, A.D. Mitchell is an extremely talented young man. And we talked ad nauseum. The one player that Georgia's lost over the last couple of years through the transfer portal, the one that really hurt is A.D. Mitchell, because that kid is a dude. Like, I'm not going to say he's George Pickens, but I mean, he kind of has that level of production.
It was the closest thing to him.
Yeah, he has that talent. Like, he's a real guy. And then they've got some other guys that can go up and get it too. I think Texas has enough to win this football game. I think everybody said that this is going to be a really good football game, and I agree with that. I think it's going to be a really good football game. Texas should take care of business, but we saw TCU beat Michigan last year in a game they had no business winning. So, and Washington is not a joke, okay? Like, they're just not a joke. I don't know. The game's in freaking Texas. So
essentially.
What?
It's in New Orleans.
I thought it was at the Cotton Bowl.
The championship game is in Houston.
Oh, shit. Okay. Got you. Anyway.
But it's technically Texas. I mean, really, like, that's Texas territory over there in New Orleans. They couldn't have lucked out more than with that location. You know? T'Vondre Sweat is him. I can confirm that. When you watch that dude play, he's something else. And what separates him from me when I watch him, he's not just the typical 330-pound beast that's going to sit there and stuff the gap against the run. He's really productive as a pass rusher too. He will whoop up some guys on one-on-ones as a pass rusher. Really, really fun guy to watch. Their whole front four is different.
Would you say Jordan Davis-esque?
No.
Okay.
Different.
Yeah, very different.
Davis, Carter, Sweat in that order for me.
What was the big defensive tackle that that Alabama had a couple years ago? Was it Mount McKinney? No, Mount McKinney was an offensive lineman, right?
Talking about Quentin Williams?
No, Alabama had a run stuffer in the middle that was massive.
Always believe in Alabama. I'm counting on you for this one, buddy.
This is your job, buddy. We're shouting out to you. Who is the massive defensive tackle they had? Cody. Look at this. Thank you.
It's
Cody
great.
was an
we have a resident insider.
Yeah, he was an absolute beast for so that is more along the lines of Mount Cody for Alabama. You're absolutely right. That's Sweat, right? More of that line where it's
different. It's different. I think Sweat's ability as a pass rusher puts him kind of in a different tier in terms of nose tackles. For in terms of what we've seen recently. Very, very different. But he has the similar impact in the sense that he changes the game plan for whatever offensive line he plays. And it's not just him. They got Byron Murphy, also pretty disruptive, more of the penetrator of the two over there in that Texas defense line. The only reason I know this is because I covered him throughout the season.
And also, what a big run stuff and defensive tackle like that, what it does for you is it allows your linebackers to run. And that's the one thing that was kind of hidden in the Georgia space whenever we had Carter and Davis up front, is you had Roquan and those other linebackers were able to run free, and nobody could put a hand on them. So you're right. That is a great point, a great take from all of you guys, that the Sweat is going to be a big impact in that football game.
Dan, let's transition into Georgia topics. We got two more for the rest of the night. Then we are out of here for the final time today. Georgia has a new defensive back coach, Dante Williams. Obviously not a guy on our radar. I think you and I both, when we talked about it originally weeks ago, thought Doug Belk was going to be that guy because he had past ties. There was that guy at Auburn. I think it was Etheridge that was linked to Georgia in the past that had come back up. Several guys that I think everybody looked at and said, oh, who's the guy that's coached with Kirby Smart? Who's the guy that's, maybe knows him or knows of him? Corey Raymond was somebody that, people may have mentioned with his job. They went out of that. They said, to hell with that. We're going to get a guy that no one's paying attention to, but is doing silently a pretty good job in Dante Williams, USC. I have seemingly not found a single connection between him and Kirby Smart or that Kirby Smart tree. But from what we've read, Dan, it seems like this guy is just an ace recruiter, or at least what they have said, that is going to help Georgia out. I'm not going to come out here and tell you I know everything about this guy because I know nothing about this guy until about the other day when Dan called me and said, hey, you're never going to guess who this guy, was the primary recruiter for. What are your takes on this hire?
So my takes are exactly what I tweeted out right away. And this isn't based on anything other. I said, the only thing I know about this guy is what's being said is that he's an elite recruiter. And that's all I need to know. Period. The end. The most important thing in college football today is recruiting, whether it's recruiting high school kids or recruiting the portal or hell, recruiting your own roster. The most important thing is recruiting. We have enough coaching in the room. And I'm not saying he's not a good coach. I'm just saying if he wasn't, it does not matter because you have Kirby Smart and Coach Boom, who are secondary coaches and can do a great job. And I saw some fussing from some people saying that, well, Thomas Davis has been coaching for 15 years or 13 years now, and he deserves a shot to coach the secondary. Or, Champ Bailey has said that he would coach. And that's great. And, maybe they'll get their turn one day. But at the end of the day, Kirby wants elite recruiters. He wants not anxious. He wants, what's the word I'm looking for? He wants guys that are going to be dogs on the trail and just don't sleep. Just eat, sleep, drink, recruiting, and going to get elite athletes. And if Kirby believes that guy is this, who the hell are we? Who the hell are we? I mean, I don't even know who Belk is. I mean, you were all about the Belk guy, and I'm not saying that it's a shot at you. I'm just saying that's a guy that you liked a lot.
I think it was a guy everybody liked a lot.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not a shot. I'm saying, but if Kirby wanted this guy instead of that guy, who the hell am I to question it?
I think that's what we got to talk about. I mean, because you look at Fran Brown, nobody knew who Fran Brown was. At least I didn't. Maybe no clue. Charlton Warren, another guy that is not. It's a little bit further back than Fran Brown. Fran Brown obviously replaced Charlton Warren, but he's gone on to become the defensive coordinator at UNC. Nobody really knew who he was. But here's the one that I think, when people want to freak out about coaching hires, I think we can just go ahead and put Stacey Sterles out there as one of like, hey, this guy got serious backlash. And what has he done? He's done pretty well for Georgia since he's gotten here. Obviously, the offensive line hasn't, at least in my opinion, seen any downgrade or any worries of regression. Altogether, I think Dan and I are together this one. Kirby trusts him. I guess we, to me, why should we doubt him? At the end of the day. Dan, let's talk the biggest news of the day.
Well, hold on. Let's get this in real quick because this is important. We did touch a little bit on it last week, but let's go ahead and Harrison, what's your initial thoughts on picking up Humphreys?
Hey, to me, like we said last week, this is a guy that Georgia's seen up close. This is a guy that they, had to face against. I forget what it was. I think it was a deep bomb on them last year against Vanderbilt. This past season against Vanderbilt,
it's a post play on the first play of the game.
Yeah, hit huge. Reports are saying that apparently he can run fast. We're talking sub 4.4 apparently. So we'll see.
Speed.
Yeah, and he has some height to him. So we'll see how that transitions here. I think it's definitely a good pickup. I'm not ready to say Georgia is done at receiver. In my opinion, Georgia needs at least one more to make me feel comfortable about where they're at in that room. with you potentially losing a guy like Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers, obviously Brock Bowers is tight end, but gets the primary share of your targets. I want to see one or two more. I got some names in mind, but that's not my information to give. So yeah, we'll
But
see.
you can just say who you want.
I mean, okay, we'll start off the bat. The Colby Young kid out of Miami, 6'5", supposed to be a jump ball guy, which I think is what Georgia kind of lacked this past year. A.D. Mitchell was that 50-50 guy when he was here. He's now gone. I know you had a guy like Marcus Roser-Jack Saint, but he was more, to me, he was a possession receiver because he was always reliable. Like, he never dropped a pass, but you weren't throwing him those go balls and saying, hey, go up and, out jump this guy. To me, if you can get Humphreys, a guy like Colby Young, to add to Dylan Bell, and whoever else is in that room, I'm pretty solid with that. And yeah, I'll hit that real quick, Daniel. Let's get your take on it. He wants to come to Athens now.
That's the 5-star
wide receiver
from Texas A&M, right?
Yep.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
I'm sprinting to the phone.
Yeah, I mean, like he's one of the elite. With Humphrey, like when he caught that ball against Georgia, I said, "Who in the hell is that? How does that happen?" Like, that's basically all I know about him. Is he absolutely smoked Georgia on the first play of the game? Now Kirby says it was an alignment issue, or whatever the case may be. But dude was smoking, and apparently he's got like Olympic level speed. I want to say he's a hurdler, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was hurdles, and isn't he like 6'5"?
He's 6'2".
6'2". All right. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. The kid can fly, and he's not tiny. So apparently he's got pretty good hands. He had almost 500 yards receiving for Vanderbilt, and they're absolutely garbage. So if he's able to put up stats on a really bad football team, listen, it's worth a shot. Speed is not something you can coach. You can't make somebody faster. I mean, you can make them a little bit faster, but like high end fast, you really can't coach it. So I'm with you on that. I don't know anything about the kid from Miami. I've not watched a single Miami football game all year long. I just know what I read, and he's the one that's 6'5", and he's a jumper, can go up and get it. Supposedly has pretty good hands. I'm on board if they want to pick that guy up. And then Evan Stewart, hell yeah. I mean, I'm just in. Unless he's a problem. But I trust the coaches in that room to decide whether a guy's a problem or not. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that.
To me, real quick, I don't expect Georgia to be a major player in this. If this goes down the NIL route with Evan Stewart, I'm not accusing him of anything. Georgia's obviously not going to win this. But to me, I think it's pretty safe to say, just off the bat, if I had to spitball teams to look out for without knowing any inside intel, I'd put USC in there, Alabama,
Florida,
Ohio State. I don't know about Florida. As of right now, I don't know about Florida.
Auburn has got the blank check. Apparently, that Yellowwood money spends different.
Yeah, I guess if it's about money, you can definitely put Auburn in there. But just off the bat, in terms of if he's looking for proven production, somebody that can produce, you can go ahead and put the Tide in there, and you go ahead and put Ohio State, maybe even USC in there. Texas is a good shout considering they just got A.D. Mitchell and look like they may have 2 first-round receivers on their roster currently. I was a little shocked that they didn't get Juice Wells. Rumors were they were going to Juice Wells, but Lane Kiffin had something to say about that. Portal King, bow down to you. Dan, let's talk Carson Beck. Returning for his senior season. I don't think this is as much of a surprise to us. I think you and I were both in agreement. If Georgia at least went to the national championship, he was going to go. A little bit of surprise.
A little bit of surprise. I'll start off on this one because you took the last one, but I'll start off on Carson. So again, Carson being back makes Georgia a significantly better football team, whether you like him or not. And I didn't run into a lot of people who didn't like Carson this year, which is refreshing, to be completely honest. And he played great all year long. I mean, did he game against Alabama? No, he did not. But you know what? There's a hell of a long list of quarterbacks who did not have their best game against Alabama. So I don't have a hard time, talking about that. But if you look at the schedule that Georgia has next year, having a veteran signal caller who's been through the gauntlet of playing in the SEC is invaluable, in my opinion. I don't think that there's an amount of significance you could put on it in words. It's just very, very important. And also, I heard the argument that, well, him coming back cost Rayola. I don't know if it did or it didn't, and I don't care, because we have a season to play next year. And guess what? After that, they'll figure it out. It's Georgia. We're not Furman, okay? Like, we'll figure it out. We'll be fine. Because guess what's going to happen next year, guys? There's going to be really good quarterbacks in the portal. And if Georgia wants one of them, they'll get one of them. If Alabama wants one, they'll get one. If USC wants one, they'll get one. Okay? So we're going to be fine. But next year, Carson Beck is coming back. And he knows the system. He knows everything. He's a really damn good football quarterback. And this, the one thing that Brian Finneran said on 680 The Fan was that he needed to come back because trying to convince your GM to make a kid a franchise quarterback with 15 games is a lot harder of a sales pitch than having 30 games, so to speak, roundabout, whatever. Mm-hmm. And, that's a very valid point. And then the cherry on the top of it is the kid wants his own national championship. So he'll have an opportunity to compete for it. A lot of people are liking to poke fun at Georgia right now, saying that we're crumbling. Alabama ruined us. It's like, we've lost one game in 2 years, guys. If that's crumbling, then I hope we crumble forever. Okay? Good God.
And I think this point, as you were making there, it's a deep class this year at quarterback. You got Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, potentially Quinn Ewers, although I don't know where he's going. I think latest rumor is he's returning for another season. And like Dan said, with the schedule Georgia has, it makes you feel a lot better heading into a place like Tuscaloosa. And Darrell K. Royal, Texas Memorial Stadium, with a veteran quarterback in there, somebody who's been through the battle, somebody who had to go on the road with the game on the line and go win against Auburn, against an Auburn team that, despite not being very good, letting that place come alive is not exactly your best plan for success, as Alabama fans learned on 4th and 32 over there in Jordan Hare. But yeah, real excited to see how he plays out, and I think it also helps Georgia in the portal a little bit here, Dan, when you're talking about getting offensive weapons. If your quarterback's well liked among playmakers, and they know you're going to throw the football a lot, well, hey, Georgia has an experienced quarterback who is, has a year of proven success. Why not go to Athens and go play with them? And also, what this means in terms of your current day roster, Dan, guys like Lab McConkey, who may or may not be on edge of, entering the draft or coming back. Maybe he's convinced to come back now because he knows the quarterback. He's played with him for a year. Other guys include, not that he's draft eligible or hit the portal, but Dylan Bell. A lot of contingency on the offense, which I think is really the big thing heading into a year where Georgia's going to have a really tough slate of games. Real quick, always believe in Alabama said, I am a Bama fan. However, I must admit next season will be interesting. Bama might play Georgia 3 times next year. Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. My theory has always been if you're going to play a team twice, lose the first time and win the second if you're not going to go undefeated. That's always my take, because usually the second time is more important than the first one in terms of championships being on the line. 3 times would be fun. As for ETN, sounds like Georgia's in the lead there. That's been the buzz since even before he hit the portal. I know Dan was asking about it before I had even heard of it. If that's still the case, obviously people are going to be pushing for him. I'd suspect him to at least portal Georgia here at this current moment in time. Dan, you got anything?
No, I that's just a lot. We had a lot to say. We had a lot to cover.
I feel like I just ran a 5K.
I know. I feel like it. Well, I did all this. Listen, I did all of this today. I'm on vacation right now from work, and I've been wanting to do this behind me. So my wife, being the awesome wife that she is, she cleaned out this room, it's the guest room closet, and it's kind of become a catch-all. And whenever I told her I was going to do a podcast, she's like, you're going to take that shit somewhere where I don't have to see it. So she stuck me in the guest room closet. So I know it looks spacious, probably where you guys are from, but it's literally a small, tiny closet. So we cleaned it out. I'm able to move my desk to the wall, and then I hung all the stuff up. Okay, so this is a Matt Ryan Rookie of the Year football that my wife won in an auction after Matt Ryan's rookie year. Do you know what year that was?
2008.
8.
Yeah, I was gonna say 7 or 8.
That has been in the top of my closet since 2008. It's never been displayed, ever.
I'm disappointed.
I know. And then on top of that, there's a Brian McKeon signed bat and glove that she won. My wife wins things. I don't know. But
She got good luck.
and then all of my Atlanta Braves World Series starting lineup. However, we just had a lot of housework done, and somebody stole my Acuna and Albies. Sons of bitches. Hey, listen. Hey, always believe in Alabama. Are you a Braves fan? Because that could be a tie that binds. We can include you in the family if you're a Braves fan. Are you a Braves
fan? The tie
fan?
that binds is the fact that he's tuned into this damn show.
I know. But he could be part of the family if he's a Braves fan.
Hey, yeah, we got fellow Braves fans, Jeremiah Stoddard. We have the GM that brought Jesse Chavez back to Atlanta, spoken into existence. Zachary Lawson here.
Oh, yeah, we covered that earlier. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Yep. Fadil Diggs committed to Syracuse. Jeremiah with the take real quick. Georgia could play Bama 3 times, but they have to win the first one, in his opinion. Gauntlet of a schedule, so a Bama loss could be 2 regular season losses. Yeah, but I think 2 regular season losses with a schedule like Georgia has, to me, should guarantee they're in. Question is, does it turn into 3 if you play for an SEC title game? Obviously, if you lose to Bama there, you're probably going to have to beat Texas. At least the pressure is going to be on to beat Texas to making the SEC championship game, assuming Texas is as good as they have been this year for that one. But my take is always, you want to win the last one. When you're playing a team multiple times, just because usually that's when it's all at stake there. Okay, yeah. Then in that case, yeah, you're right. You want to win that first one if you do have to play them 3 times. I'm really excited to see how college football plays out next year because it is really a loaded schedule. Yes. A little bit upset still that none of the bigger games are at home for Georgia. It feels like we've been robbed 2 years in a row, the biggest games being on the road or at a neutral site. Obviously, everyone's forgetting Georgia opens with Clemson in Atlanta.
No shit.
Yeah. So it's been, I hope that goes away. I hope they start scheduling more home and homes for big games. I know neutral site's better for you because Georgia fans travel, but good God, can we get a big home game, please? Here, we haven't had lights in a little while. Obviously, they played Ole Miss at night, which was a great game to watch if you're a Georgia fan. Not so much if you were a Rebels. Dan, before we wrap it up, you got anything to add?
No, you already asked that, and I added, so we're good.
Let's do it. Hey, for the Top Talk podcast, for Dan Kiley, for Harrison Reno, this is episode 113. Go check out our interview with Cam Robinson, really underrated running back in the class of 2024. Not only that, but the state of Georgia itself. Probably, in my opinion, the best running back in the state of Georgia. Go turn on that highlight tape, and you'll see why. We actually let him break down his highlight tape, some of our favorite plays from there. Over in that interview. You can find it over on the Top Dog Talk YouTube channel. We really appreciate y'all. Been a hell of a 3-week one for us. Believe, Dan, we are up 14 plus subscribers in the last week or so. So appreciate y'all for hitting that like and subscribe button. We'll see you back next week here. Awesome show as usual, guys. Keep up the great work. We appreciate you always. Believe in Alabama. Next week, Georgia, FSU preview by yours truly. Over here at the Top Talk podcast, we'll be here. See you back next week, guys.
Go Dogs!